Cheers.
Hey, Sima.
Hey, Tim.
We're going to talk about a great topic today, expressed through the question, what makes an idea good?
I love that one.
We're going to try to answer that really important question. So, the first thought I have on that question of what makes an idea good is that there's really no absolute way to determine a good idea in isolation. You can't just look at an idea and say it's good or not. And I think I can prove that point with a simple example. So, take building manned spaceships and traveling to the moon.
That worked out.
It did, for some. Was it a good idea? Well, for the United States in the 1960s, you could probably say it was a good idea. Inspired a generation of engineers, and we actually got there successfully, so great. Same idea, China in the year 2025.
Good idea.
So they're investing in their space program, and they want to demonstrate their technical capability to the world. What about for a small to mid-sized software company based in Midtown Manhattan in the year 2014?
Pretty bad idea.
Terrible idea. Would be bankrupt in 5 minutes. So same idea, different context, different environment, different outcome, different judgment about whether it was good or not. So what is that context that the idea lives? Well, it's the framing of it, it's the situation, it's the problem, it's the definition, it's the objectives, and most particularly, it's the constraints. What are the resources available? How much money, time, resource do we have? And when you frame up the idea against those constraints and context, then you can see, right? Very similar thought I've had about evolution, actually, and something I read and think about a lot, which is biological, natural selection, evolution. And I think there's an analogy to be made here, so bear with me for 1 second. I think I can make it. So let's say you have a population, a stable population of sameness, which is how you get to be a current contemporary population, by being the same, by reproducing similarly. But every once in a while, nature runs an experiment and does something different with offspring. And let's say you had brown-furred squirrels, and all of a sudden you have a percentage of them which are snowy white.
Oh.
It's cute, right? Could you look at that snowy white furred squirrel and say, is that good or bad? Well, a naturalist would be unable to determine that. If you just looked at that, you could not say whether that was a good change or bad change. You have to run that through the environment in which the squirrels live in. So it's going to alter their metabolism potentially, or how visible or not they are to predators, which could make them more easily or less easily eaten. Your poor little squirrel.
Or it could make it more likely to be adopted as a pet.
That's true, and could be domesticated for the first time. They have not been. So only when you look at that change in the environment, and the word in evolution is fitness with the environment, which I think is such a great phrase to use in innovation. So only those changes that have great fitness for the environment are good. And those changes that are not a good fitness for the environment are not so good. As we were mentioning before, the environment with innovation is the context and the constraints. So which ideas demonstrate a good fitness for that context and constraints are those that are good. So how could that play out in an innovation program more practically, or in kindling context and constraints and environment?
Well, I'd say the first step in discovering those great ideas and those fitting ideas is to determine what the environment is. And you can use a kindling campaign or category to introduce the environment. With your campaign or category title, you describe your topic, your challenge, what you're trying to achieve, your goals. And then in your description, you can get more detailed about what your constraints and your criteria are. So are you limited with resources, with budget, with time? Those are the types of things you would describe in more detail in your description or in your post.
So you're trying to frame it for people. You're trying to give them enough information. You're trying to
enough context.
Enough context and be empathetic of them. They're probably really busy, and if you hope for them to help solve your problem, you owe it to properly frame the context, right? That's at least increases your probability there. Another thing that's informed our thinking here, kindling, is the Lean Startup. If you haven't read the Lean Startup, have you read Lean Startup?
I haven't.
It's so great. You should. So Lean Startup introduces a few relevant concepts here. So Eric Ries talks about kind of the Caesar mentality of startups, particularly founder-led startups, where when a new idea is brought to the founder, they can sometimes think of it by, yes, we're going to do it. I love that idea.
Yay, nay.
Or that's a terrible idea. We're not going to do it, right? And that judgment comes from
gut feel.
Basically gut feel, and you better have a good gut if you're going to base your decision-making on gut feel, right? So instead of that, better to build a system that is able to break ideas down into component parts, gather information about them, and test them, gather data, and learn something about the idea so that it can prove whether it's good or not. And that is the key insight. If an idea can prove itself to be a good idea, it is therefore a good idea. If it cannot prove itself to be a good idea, it is not. Simple example. Let's say we're a bike company and I just traveled to Europe and I saw those really cute European-style kick bikes.
Balance bikes?
Balance bikes. They have no cranks and the kids can learn to balance on them and then they progress up to different kinds of bikes. And I have the idea, because I'm Caesar, that we're going to bring that back to America. So it's going to cost us $10 million, and we build a whole product line, and we get a brand, and we find distributors, and we sell it through Toys R Us. And unfortunately, nobody buys it, or a very small percentage of people buy it. And we have to write off the whole $10 million investment.
That's a big loss.
It would be a huge loss for our small little software company. So what we should rather do, instead of investing $10 million in building out this line, let's break it down to component parts and let's see if there's something about it we could validate before we spend that money. One thing we could do is build a prototype of the bike, and we can invite 100 potential customers into our office and expose them to the bike, show videos of it, show kids riding it, and talk to them about the product and learn what they think about it. And if we learn overwhelmingly that they don't like it, it's different, they wouldn't buy it for their kids, well, that's good evidence that perhaps this is not a good idea for us now. But if we learn that everybody wanted to buy one while they were there, well, now is that a good idea? Not so fast, not yet, but it's at least we're building a case for it being an idea that is worthy of investing in. It's becoming a good idea because it's proving itself to be a good idea. So now we can go through the other hurdles of legal review and procurement and finding distributors and all the rest of it, but at least we have some evidence that this is potentially a good idea. So how could you think of what I was talking about, lean startup, moving ideas through a workflow? How could you do that in an innovation program in Kindling?
In Kindling, you have the concept of a workflow, and you can set up custom states to move ideas through on the way to a decision. For instance, in your bike example, you might have a legal review state or a focus group state, and those are the steps at which you're validating whether an idea is going to work for you or not, and whether it's a good idea.
What about if the idea is we want to buy a new projector for the conference room? Would I have to move the idea through all these kind of steps, or could I just approve the idea and buy it?
No, for a smaller idea like that, it could probably move quicker through a smaller workflow.
Okay, but if the idea is we're going to invest $10 million to bring this new
then
bike
that's
line
something you definitely want to validate
along the way and use that kind of lean startup thinking to move an idea through. Excellent. What about evolving ideas generally and how an idea may change through time in Kindling?
I think you're talking about the evolution of an idea, and that's something that Kindling is really great at. And the way that you do that in Kindling is through collaboration, through the feedback of your community. So an idea, when it first is submitted, may not have all of those characteristics that make it a great idea. But once you get the feedback of your community or of your experts or of these focus groups, you can evolve the idea into a better state.
So back to our example, maybe we learn that people really like the idea of these balance bikes, but they don't like the wooden frames because those are different. So we can make a prototype that doesn't have the wood frame.
That's right.
So we learned something, we validated the idea, but now it's changing, and it's on its way towards becoming a good idea.
And that changed idea is the better idea.
Exactly, and that's kind of the key point with Kindling, that socializing the idea through time and having it change through the interaction with others increases the probability of it being a good idea. So to answer the important question on the table, what makes an idea good? An idea is good if it has a good relationship, good fitness with its environment, which are its context and constraints. And an idea is good, most importantly, if it proves itself to be good, not just because I think it is or think it isn't, but it proves itself to be good.
Right.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks.